In case of emergency, please notify.
Snow country is a region in Japan known for heavy long-lasting snowfalls. It lies on the main island Honshu on the side towards the Sea of Japan, facing the Korean peninsula. The area includes a part of the Japanese Alps mountain range. It is quite amazing how much it snows there. Two-story buildings can disappear under the snow. Some plowed roads are surrounded by high walls of snow that can be up to 10 meters high. One area with lots of snow is Niigata Prefecture. It lies within easy reach from Tokyo by express train. When I was a student, I bought a ticket from London to Tokyo. When I checked in, they upgraded me to business class without telling me. I boarded the plane and went to my seat, which I found surprisingly comfortable. A service-minded stewardess asked me what I wanted from a multi-choice lunch menu. I still didn't know I was in business class, since it was at the front end of the airplane and I never went to the back. That flight took a route over the North Pole to Anchorage in Alaska for a transit stop. Most seats around me were empty and there was plenty of space. I looked out the window down at the distant icy Arctic landscape passing by beneath. I wondered how long we would survive in case of an emergency landing on the ice. I came to think about the Swedish expedition in 1897, which made an attempt to reach the North Pole in a hydrogen balloon. They got off to a bad start from one of the Arctic islands in Svalbard, drifted off course in a storm, and finally had to emergency land on the ice. They had food and equipment to handle the situation, but after 2 months wandering on the ice, the 3 members eventually died trying to return to Svalbard. Some say the leader of the expedition, the engineer and physicist André, was a victim of his own success as a fundraiser, and that the big donations made it impossible to back out of the risky expedition. Being prisoner of one's own success can sometimes be fatal. We arrived in Anchorage in Alaska for a transit landing. We were told we could leave the aircraft for an hour and stretch our legs. I talked to a middle-aged couple at the gate. They were going to Japan to play golf. That must be expensive, I thought. A luxury trip for wealthy tourists. They were nice. I talked with them as we went back to the aircraft. By mistake, I passed my seat when I was following them and got into the economy class seats. It was an unexpected shock to see so many people sitting packed like sardines, with hardly any space. No one had told me I was upgraded to business class, so that came unexpected. I quickly returned to my comfortable seat and was soon served a glass of champagne. It is interesting how quickly one can adapt to a new normal. Most of the people in economy class had paid much more than me for their tickets. But that was an enjoyable trip. In my opinion, compared to air travel, train is a convenient way of traveling. Usually there is plenty of space in the seat and it's possible to go for a walk. Sometimes to a cafe car where it's possible to buy a cup of coffee or a simple meal. The view from the window gives a perfect panorama view of the landscape passing by, which gives a sense of the distance traveled. The only problem is that trains are too slow for very long distance traveling. It is possible to take train from Europe to Beijing. The Trans-Siberian Railway goes through Siberia in Russia to Beijing in China. That trip takes more than a week. That distance just takes a few hours by airplane. So for practical reasons, it's hard to allocate that much time. Apart from the long travel time, I think it would be really interesting to see the landscape gradually change from Europe to China. One reason I like Japan is the efficient train system with extremely fast trains. The high-speed trains gives opportunity to see the landscape while still moving very fast. The Shinkansen trains are running frequently all the way from the southern island Kyushu all the way up to the northern island Hokkaido. And I think that whole trip can be done in just over 5 hours. That is fantastic. The Shinkansen trains were introduced in 1964, and as far as I know there has been no accident, which is amazing considering all the earthquakes and typhoons that hit the country. My first stop is Tokyo, which is the capital city of Japan. The area, including surroundings, is home for more than 37 million people. That makes it the most populous metropolitan area in the world. It is located near the boundary of 3 tectonic plates, which are building up tension, which cause frequent small earthquakes, as well as less frequent powerful earthquakes. The city itself is an interesting place. What is striking is how well organized everything is. Japan has a very different culture compared to Europe. I always find it refreshing to go to Japan. It is like discovering the world from a different angle. At home, there are a few surprises in everyday life. Although there is much variation, it's always within expectation. In Japan, there are always unexpected things to discover, in many cases, very positive surprises. I like much of the food in Japan. The restaurants often have 3-dimensional models of the dishes, or at least photos of what they look like. That makes it easy to order for people who don't speak Japanese. During my stay in Tokyo, I stayed at a hotel in Shinjuku, not far from the train station. In that area there are lots of underground malls with lots of shops and restaurants. One afternoon I was looking for somewhere to get something to eat, and I saw an udon restaurant. It was a Japanese fast food kind of place, but it had a certain style with 50s and 60s jazz music pouring out of the speakers. As people came in, looked at the images and bought a ticket for the dish in the vending machine. Then they moved on to the counter, gave the ticket to the person on the other side, who quickly prepared the dish and put it on a tray on the counter. The customer could then move on to get water and chopsticks before sitting down. All very smooth and efficient, all to the jazz club style music. The udon was good and it was a nice experience. At another occasion, in one of the many underground malls near Tokyo Station, I found a restaurant which probably was the smallest restaurant I've been to in my life. It was packed with people. I think it was about 25 guests in a very small space, the size of a living room. There was a waitress moving around between the tables, taking orders and pouring water into glasses, and a guy sitting at the cashier near the exit. The waitress offered me to put my bag in a basket under the seat. That was a way to save space, which was necessary. I ordered and got my meal. It was excellent. Some ramen and katsudon. It was just amazing to see how well organized everything was. To be able to have that many guests in such a tiny space and making it run smoothly. There wasn't an inch in that room that wasn't planned thoroughly. That is the case with almost all shops and restaurants in Tokyo. Japan Japan is a very densely populated country, but the population is not evenly distributed. Over 77% of the people live on just 2% of the land area. One reason for that is that about 75% of the country is mountains, and almost 70% of the area is covered with forests. That is a lot of nature relatively. Most of the densely populated areas are along the Pacific coast. The country is also very urbanized, with over 90% of the population living in cities. If one leaves the metropolitan areas and go to the mountains or the coast facing the Sea of Japan, the population density is actually quite low. YUZAWA is a village in Niigata Prefecture known for hot springs and ski areas. It is also known for being the location described in Nobel Prize winner Yasunari Kawabata's novel Yukiguni from 1935. I have read that book long time ago, and I remember the description of the train ride through a tunnel. That story is from a different time with few similarities to my trip by Shinkansen to YUZAWA. The main character in the book, Shimamura, went there in December, which I also did. I checked into a traditional Japanese inn, but unlike the story in the novel, there was no sign of any geisha as far as I could see. The next day I rented ski equipment and went to the slopes. It was a bit early in the season, with temperatures around freezing. The snow felt a bit wet and heavy at the lower part of the slopes. It was okay, but in the afternoon it started raining slightly, which is not the optimal conditions for skiing. The heavy snowfalls in the region starts later in the season, from mid-December continuing during the first months of the new year. The ski slope was not crowded since it was off-season, but there was still quite a lot of people. The one thing I noticed immediately was that about 99% were using snowboard. I had difficulties finding anyone with skis. I asked a guy sitting next to me in a lift about skis being out of fashion. He told me skis are coming back again, so I was right to use skis. I think he was being polite to me. For a moment I thought about switching gear to snowboard, but decided to stick with the skis. The last day of my stay, I got a ticket to get a shiatsu massage. I got into the massage place and was greeted by a guy wearing a white coat, the kind medical doctors use. Shiatsu is a massage method using pressure points, which is very efficient to relieve tension from stress. It was a good massage and I felt relaxed afterwards. I went to a ramen shop on the other side. I was sitting along a counter. There was only one more guest, a Japanese woman sitting a few seats away from me. On the other side of the counter was a ramen chef. I ordered and got a bowl of ramen, which is a kind of Japanese noodle soup. The three of us had a talk about the skiing, and I also mentioned I had a shiatsu massage next door. The ramen was very good and I appreciated talking with them. When I had finished eating, I said goodbye and went back to my room. Through the window I could see it had started snowing a lot that afternoon. The spruce trees outside were covered in thick layers of snow, as would be expected in snow country. It is the small moments that make up the largest part of life, not the major milestones or the big events. It is each and every small step along the path that leads us to wherever we end up. It is the everyday moments that is life. Maybe what is important in life is not what we think is important. Maybe it's all the other things around us, the things we don't notice. When being too busy looking at faraway goals, we risk losing the path. So many people get lost in life, trying to reach the end of the rainbow, just to discover they were led astray. Other people just follow a path and end up at fantastic places they didn't even know existed.